The groom's mother lifted the ring box off the registrar's table and dropped it into her handbag. "He paid for the dress as well," she said, loud enough for the back rows. "I would like it back on Monday. Cleaned." Dowie Camp had stopped 4 steps short of the table. He was not looking at the bride. He was looking at the woman in the gold sequins at the end of the second row, and he had been looking at her since the doors opened. 210 people sat very still in the Ropewalk Institute. Then the phones came up. A man near the fire exit laughed and turned it into a cough. Nobody stood. Fenna Wiersma did not move. She was 33, a plus-size woman who spent her weekends on the returns line at the Kelbrook clothing depot, and she had cut and sewn the dress herself over 4 months at a kitchen table after nights. She looked at the ring box in the handbag. She looked at Dowie. Then she turned to the room. "There is food for 200, she said. "It is paid for until 7. It would be a shame." That was all. She did not ask him why. She did not look at the woman in gold. The registrar closed her book. Magali Fabre had married 400 couples in that hall and had cancelled 6. How do you want the entry recorded? Put nobody at fault. The side door had been open for some time. A man sat in it in a wheelchair in a plain dark coat with a folder on his knees, waiting for a room that had been booked for him at 3:30. He had not moved through any of it. He spoke now, and he did not raise his voice at all. "There is a receipt in that box with her name on it." The groom's mother stopped in the aisle. She took the box out of the handbag and put it back on the table, and she could not afterwards have explained why she did. "You can sit down," the man said to Fenna. "The room is yours until 7. She had no idea that the quiet man holding the side door was the head of the Piras family, that half the city could not say his name in a normal voice, or that by 5:20 that afternoon she would be married to him. The caterers stopped lifting trays. The band stopped coiling cable. Every sound in the hall went out at once, and what was left was the traffic on Ropewalk Street. The institute manager came down the side of the hall at speed because he had a booking at 6 and a room full of people who were not leaving. "Ladies and gentlemen, we do have to clear the hall. You took a deposit for this room until 7, the man in the doorway said. "That is correct, but under the circumstances." "Whose circumstances?" The manager opened his mouth and shut it. "Did she cancel the room?" "No, sir." "Did she ask for the deposit back?" "No, sir." "Then she has it until 7. Not because the manager had suddenly grown a spine, because arguing with that particular man in that particular building had never once been done, and he found he was not going to be the first. Gavino Piras was 44. His grandfather had owned the docks at Ferrymouth, and the haulage that came off them, and his family had owned other things that appeared on no register anywhere. He had run all of it from a chair since he was 25. Men who had known his father for 30 years still asked permission to leave a room he was in and could not say who had taught them to. He was also that afternoon 4 hours away from losing the only thing his family had ever done that he was not ashamed of. Fenna sat down at last because her legs had decided the matter for her. He came alongside the table and put the folder on it. "Do you need a doctor?" "No." "Do you need a car?" "There is a bus at 10 past. There are 200 people out there who have to be told something," she said. "That is the actual problem. Half of them drove." He looked at her for a moment. "Somebody is telling them now." Out in the corridor, a woman in a grey coat came past with a clerk, half a step behind her, carrying a document case. She glanced through the doors at the dress and the empty top table. "Is that the wedding?" It was. "Then the room will be free by 6, Elfride Piontek said, and went on toward the committee room without slowing down. The Ropewalk Institute had a ramp on its east side, cut through a listed wall in 1984, with no consent from anybody and no record in any file. It had been done in one weekend for one man. In 40 years, no council officer had ever written a letter about it. There were 14 such ramps and 4 such lifts in that city, and none of them existed on paper. He opened the folder. "I am going to say something now that is going to sound like the worst thing anybody has said to you today. It is not a joke, and it is not a kindness. Read it or throw it at me. Say it. The trust that built this hall pays money every year to the families of 41 people who burned to death in 1912. The deed says the family trustee must be a married man. I am not one. At midnight, the trusteeship passes to the woman who just walked past that door. I have an application to change the deed, and it is listed in March. I need to still be trustee in March. Fenna looked at the paper. It was 2 pages. It had been drafted a long time ago by somebody very careful. You want to marry a stranger. I want to be married by 5:30. There is a registrar in the building, and she has an hour left on her shift. You have known me for 6 minutes. Yes. You are asking on the worst afternoon of my life. Yes, he said. That is exactly what it is. I am not going to dress it up for you. She read both pages twice. Separate floors, her own name kept, dissolution on her word at any time after March, a payment. Take out the money, she said. It is standard. It is standard for a thing I am not doing. Take it out. She put her finger on the clause. Put this in instead. Every question I ask you, you answer truthfully, or you say plainly that you will not answer. There is no third thing. That is a great deal more expensive than the money. I know. Magali Fabra was asked whether it could be done in the hour, and said that it could, and then said the other thing because she had been a registrar for 22 years and had seen a great deal. You do not have to. Nobody in this building can make you. Not him either. I know, Fenna said. Is the fee the same as this morning's? It is. Then, it is already paid. At 5:20, Magali Fabra opened her book again in a hall that smelled of 200 untouched dinners. The witnesses were the caretaker and a waitress who had been about to go home, and the waitress cried and apologized for crying. Fenna signed in her own hand, without a pause. The pen did not stop once. Not because she had decided anything about the man beside her, because she had spent 6 years watching what happens to families when nobody writes the thing down properly, and she was not leaving that room with a blank line in a register. The house at Correndale had no thresholds in it. She noticed on the second morning. Every strip of wood and brass across every doorway on the ground floor had been taken up years ago, and the floors made level and the doors rehung so that they opened the other way. She had carried a full tray from the kitchen to the long room without turning sideways in a doorway, and she was halfway down the corridor before she understood that she had not turned sideways in a doorway for as long as she could. Remember, there was a pencil sharpener screwed to the end of the kitchen table. Nobody mentioned it. It was simply always there, and the pencil in the jar beside it was always sharp. She kept her shifts. That had not been in the 2 pages, and neither of them raised it. On Saturday morning at 5 o'clock, she was on the 6th line at Kelbrook in the same grey tabard as 240 other people. The returns came down the belt at a rate nobody had voted for. Nobody on that floor knew her name. The line ran on a code. Every garment came back with a reason field, and the reason field was where the country told the truth about itself. Listen to this one, Fenna said, holding up a card. Reason for return. It arrived. The girl beside her snorted. That is it. That is the whole reason. It arrived. What did she think it was going to do? Read the other one. Reason for return. Fits. 4 people down the belt laughed at that, and one of them was a supervisor who had not laughed in a month, and the line ran a little easier for an hour. She did not laugh at her own. She never did. At 10:30, the girl beside her, who was 17 and 4 weeks in, misscanned a cage of 40 and sent it to the wrong bay. It was the kind of thing that got a starter finished on the spot. Fenna took the cage back herself, walked it round and told the floor lead she had scanned it. She lost her break for it and got a note on her file. Why did you do that? The girl said afterwards, furious in the way frightened people are, because I have got a note on my file and you would have had a P45. That is not fair on you. It is not fair on anybody, Fenna said. It is just cheaper this way round. On the second Sunday he came out to the yard while she was waiting for her lift, because it was the only 20 minutes of the week she stood still. Most people, he said, would have spent the last month talking about that afternoon. To who? To anybody. That is generally the appeal of it. Fenna watched the gate. 200 people watched a man decide something about me in public, she said. If I go round the county explaining it, then 200 becomes 2,000, and the story stops being a thing that happened and starts being a thing I am. She shifted the bag on her shoulder. He is allowed to have changed his mind. I am allowed to not carry it about with me. Those are different arguments, and I only get to win the second one. And the ring box. The ring box was hers to be embarrassed about, she said, not mine. Not because she had forgiven anybody. Because she had done the arithmetic on what carrying it would cost her per week and she could not afford it. On Sunday at 6 in the morning in a kitchen with a level floor, he asked her about the depot radio. Is it the same 40 songs? 38. There were 40. 2 got taken off in March, and nobody knows why. Which 2? That is the thing. Nobody can remember them. We have all been trying since March. You can only remember the ones that are still on. That is unbearable. It is worse than unbearable. Somebody wrote to head office about it. What did head office say? Head office said the playlist is centrally managed. She poured the tea. Which is exactly what you say when you have lost the list. He did not smile. But he asked a second question and then a third, and neither was about the trust or the deed or the hearing in March. The tea went cold in both cups. A woman in a dressing gown explained the politics of a warehouse radio to a man the city was afraid of. He read the marriage entry again that night alone. She had signed her own name in full first time. No hesitation, no shake in the letters. He had watched a great many people sign a great many things. Nobody signs like that on the worst afternoon of their life, unless signing is something they used to do all day. On the Tuesday, she asked him to drop her at the county record office because it was Tuesday and she had nothing to do, and she had not been inside a search room in 6 years. The queue at the document counter was 7 deep. She filled in the order slip against the wall, and when she got to the reference, she reached over, took his hand, turned it palm down, and wrote the number on the back of it in pencil. Pens are not allowed past that door, she said, still writing. Not since 1996. A man in Chester put a biro through a burial register, and now the whole country writes on its hands, or on a slip. But the slips run out. She finished the number and let go, and moved up the queue, and neither of them said anything about it at all. At the counter, she gave her name. The clerk typed it, stopped, and looked at the screen for slightly too long. 1 moment. He went into the back. He came out with a supervisor. The supervisor did not take the slip. She stood with her hands folded, and she was perfectly polite, and her voice carried the length of the counter. I am sorry. We are not able to accept research orders under that name. It is a copy of a marriage entry. I understand. There is a notification on the account. It came from the association. I am not able to go behind it here. The notification is 6 years old. I am sorry. The queue behind her was 7 deep, and every one of them had stopped pretending not to listen. Gavino moved up beside her. Who put the notification on? I am not able to discuss it, sir. Who can? Nobody in this building. Then find me somebody in another one. Sir, the supervisor said, there is nobody. It is a professional register. It is not ours. And that was the end of it. There was no number he could ring. There was no door that opened. There were 14 ramps in that city, cut without permission. And a woman behind a counter with a laminated notice had just stopped him dead in front of 7 strangers, and he sat in the middle of it and could do nothing at all. Fenna took the slip back off the counter and folded it once. Thank you, she said to the supervisor. You did that properly. Some of them do not. In the car, she looked out of the window, and he did not ask her a single question all the way back for 40 minutes, not because he was being delicate. Because a woman who thanks the person who has just shut a door in her face has answered the question already, and he wanted the rest of it from somewhere that would not cost her anything. The firm was above a carpet shop and had 4 desks in it. The young man on the front desk had been there 2 years and had never met her. When Gavino said the name, he lit up like a lamp. Wiersma. Seriously, Fenna Wiersma. You know the name. Everybody knows the name. She did the Corran estate. Nobody had found a beneficiary in that file for 4 years, and she did it out of a parish register and a bank ledger in a fortnight. He was pulling a folder off a shelf before anyone asked him to. There is a whole module on her method. You track the money the family actually spent, not the names they gave. It is the first thing they teach you here. Why did she leave? The young man's face went flat and honest. I do not know. I have never known. Nobody here will say. She left the year before I came, and there is a case study with her name on it in the training pack, and I am not allowed to open it, and I have wanted to for 2 years. Why not open it? Because it is the module on professional conduct, the young man said, and they take a register. Gavino left with a profession and a hole. She gave him the rest herself, and she did it in 2 pieces, 4 days apart, and neither piece was asked for. The first came at the kitchen table on the Thursday, over the fund's quarterly papers, which she had picked up because they were on the table, and she read anything on a table. I found a family, she said, without looking up. 11 months before, the firm told them. I found them in the March, and the firm sat on it until the February after, because the fee goes up with the size of the estate, and the estate was still being sold. So they waited. That is all it was. They waited. And you told the family. I told the family. Then I told the solicitors. Then I told the firm I had told the solicitors, which was stupid, and I would do it in exactly the same order again. They dismissed you. They settled with the family and dismissed me. And the association agreed with the firm, and the appeal took 2 years and my savings. And it confirmed 3 lines of the original decision. She turned a page. That is the part people get wrong. I did not lose because I was right and unlucky. I lost on a technicality that was true. I had taken client papers home. I had. That is what is in the case study. There is a case study. There is a case study, she said, with my name on it. It is in the training pack of every firm in the country. I am the thing they teach new researchers not to be. She said it exactly the way she said the reason field on a returns card. The second piece came 4 days later at the window of the long room at 10:30 at night, neither of them sitting down. The worst part is not the money, she said. The worst part is that I am good at it. If I were mediocre, I would have made my peace by now. He did not answer, and she did not want him to, and neither of them left the window for a long time, and the only thing that happened in the whole room was that the traffic on the ring road thinned out. Afterwards, she carried the funds file up with her because the deed required the trustee's wife to witness the annual declaration in March, and she had never in her life witnessed a document she had not read. She read for 2 hours. Then she stopped on page 4, went back 3 pages, and sat entirely still. The enquiry reports for the Threepleton share for a year for 22 years all returned empty. Every single one of them had searched the index for Threepleton. The name on the fire register was Thrippleton. The sheet was behind the door of the packing office at Kelbrook on a clipboard under the fire drill notice, and it had been there for 7 weeks before she saw it. Somebody had ruled it in biro, 2 columns. Names down one side, dates down the other. At the top in capitals it said, "How long?" There were 22 entries. Some of them had a 3rd column for reasons, because people cannot leave a thing alone. Before Christmas. Before the hearing in March. She will not last the summer. He has to be married, that is all it is. Everyone knows that. One entry said she is a nice enough lass, but he is not going to keep her. The handwriting on that one belonged to a woman who had shared a belt with her for 4 months and had given her half a flask of soup in January. Fenna read all 22. Then she put the clipboard back on the nail, straightened the fire drill notice over it, and worked her shift. Nobody said a hard word to her that week or the week after. That was the thing about it. Everyone was perfectly kind. Conversations simply arrived at a natural end whenever she came into the packing office the way they do at a wake. The soup woman still gave her half a flask in the cold weather. That was the part Fenna could not put anywhere. It was possible to hold both of those things at once about a person, and she had spent 6 years being held that way by an entire profession, and she still had not worked out where to file it. Gavino found out because the floor lead told the site manager, and the site manager told the operations director, and the operations director told a man who had been afraid of the Piras family since 1991. He did not sack anybody. He did not come to the depot. He did not mention it at home for 4 days. On the Friday, the clipboard came back off the nail, with a new line at the bottom in a hand nobody on that floor recognized. G. Piras. The 14th of June, 1962 years from now. Nobody claimed it. Nobody rubbed it out. The sheet stayed on the nail for another month with that one line at the bottom of it, and by the end of the month 3 people had crossed their own entries out. Magali Fabra came to the house on the Sunday because she had married them, and because she had cancelled 6 weddings in her career, and had never once stopped thinking about any of them. She listened to the whole of it. The reports, the spelling. 22 years. Then she put her cup down. Can I say the thing nobody else is going to say to you? You are going to anyway. You are not doing this for 41 dead rope makers, Magali said. You are doing it because a man walked away from you at 4 in the afternoon in front of 200 people. You have not been able to be right about anything since. This is the first thing in 6 years you can be right about. Fenna did not answer. I am not saying you are wrong about the file. I am saying I know exactly what you look like, because I have that face in a book of 6 cancellations, and I look at it more than I should. You're right, Fenna said at last. That is why I have checked it 4 times instead of once. The old man's number was in the book. It had been in the book since 1964. She rang him on the Tuesday from the kitchen with the pencil sharpener at her elbow. She talked to Wilf Thrippleton for 50 minutes. His father's job, his mother's maiden name, a street that had been pulled down in 1971. She laughed twice. She said sorry when she interrupted him. She read a date back to him 3 times to be certain she had it. Gavino stood in the doorway of his own kitchen for 4 minutes of it, and then went away again. He was jealous, and it took him most of the afternoon to work out of what. Not of a man of 81. Of the fact that a complete stranger on a telephone on a first attempt got the warm version. The one that asks a second question. The one he had been getting in small pieces in kitchens at 6 in the morning for 4 months, and had been counting. 3 weeks later, on another call, the old man said it out loud without knowing what he was saying. Is your husband stood there again? He is not. He was breathing on that line for 4 minutes last time, Love Wilf said. I have got one good ear, and it is a very quiet house. At 4 in the morning, on the 8th day, she drew her own. It was not a decision. She had a card in front of her, and a sharp pencil, and 41 names she could not stop thinking about. And her hand simply started at the bottom of the card, with herself the way it had started 10,000 times with somebody. Else, Fenna Wiersma. Her mother died. Her father gone before that. No brothers. No sisters. No children. One marriage, 7 months old, to a man on the floor above, entered in a register in a hall she had been left standing in. She got to the top of the card in less than a minute. Then she sat, looking at it because there was nothing else to do to it. The whole of her fitted on one side of a piece of card with room left over, and she had spent her entire working life putting 400 people back into families who could not fit on a table. She did not cry loudly. She was not a loud person about anything. He came down because the kitchen light was on at 4 in the morning, and it never was. She did not hide the card. She turned it round so he could see it. That is everybody, she said. That is the lot. I can find anyone. I can find a woman who changed her name twice and died in a county she never lived in. And that is me. One side of a card, and I did it in 50 seconds, and I've got nothing to check. He did not come closer, and he did not say anything kind because she would have had to survive it. She wiped her face with the back of her wrist. Then she turned the card over, wrote Thrippleton at the bottom of the clean side in capitals, and started again from the fire. His grandmother had a sister, she said. I have not done the sister. She worked until 7. She never mentioned the other side of the card again, and neither did he, and he never once threw it away. It took 4 days to find Wilf Thrippleton, and he lived 7 miles from the memorial hall his grandmother's name was cut into. It took another 16 to find the rest. Fenna worked at the kitchen table with the sharp pencil and a library card and a laptop, and she did not use one document that was not free and public. That was deliberate. Every single thing she used was something Straker Tracing Services had been paid to look at 4 times a year since 2002. By the end, she had a list of 26 households. 14 of them were inside the county. One of them was on the same bus route as the Institute. She found 4 other things, and each of them had a different weight in the hand. The first was the spelling, and it was hers alone. Nobody who had not spent a decade in indexes would have seen it, because it did not look like a mistake. It looked like diligence. 4 searches a year, correctly formatted, correctly dated, correctly signed off, every one of them run against the surnames cut into the plaque in the entrance hall in 1922 by a stonemason working from a newspaper. Threepleton for Thrippleton, Sowerbutt for Sowerby, Maddock for Maddox, Kinsley for Kinsella. 22 years of searching for people who had never existed and finding correctly nobody. The second was a piece of paper that could not be true. The file closed the Thrippleton share in 1987 on a death certificate for Wilf's father. Fenna read the entry number twice. The number belonged to a registration district that had been abolished in 1974. Wilf's father had died in Rochdale in 1991, and his son had registered it himself and had the copy in a biscuit tin. The third was Wilf. The fourth arrived by accident. The deed required the annual declaration of unclaimed shares to be made at a meeting open to the public in the hall, and the Institute had a camera over its entrance that kept 4 years. The minutes for the last 3 years recorded an attendance, a discussion, and a resolution, and put the meeting at 50 minutes. The recording showed the hall doors opening at 2 people going in, and both of them coming out again at 4 minutes past. 2 days before the declaration, there was a family lunch at Corondale, and Gavino's aunt Assunta sat at the end of it and passed the dish and asked Fenna a question in the same voice. "Would you like it dealt with, dear?" The woman. "Before Thursday." Fenna put the spoon down. "Dealt with. There is no need for you to be in a room with her at all," Assunta said. "You have had a year. It would be nothing." She turned to her nephew's cousin and asked about a boat. Nobody at that table looked up. Not the 2 men at the far end. Not the girl pouring water. It was the ordinariness of it that put the cold down Fenna's back, and she thought about it for the rest of the week. "No," she said. "Thank you." "No," she told him. That night. He listened and said nothing at all, and she did not understand the silence until Magali told her 4 months afterwards what Assunta had said to Magali in a car park in a temper. He had been asked the same question in October before Fenna had found anything, and he had said no then too, and he had given a reason which was not like him. She has spent 6 years being described by people who were not in the room, he had said. On Thursday she gets to be the one describing it. I am not taking that off her to save myself a mourning. The declaration was held at 2 o'clock on the Thursday in the hall of the Ropewalk Institute, under the plaque with the 41 names on it. There was a table at the front. The deed of 1913 required the family trustee to sit at it. It required his wife to sit beside him and witness the declaration with her own signature. That clause had been written by a man who assumed a great deal about wives. Elfrida Piontek arrived at 10 to 2 with her document case and stopped inside the door. The hall was full. 200 people were sitting in the seats where the wedding guests had sat. They had come off buses and out of taxis, and one of them had come from Blackpool on a coach. They were not journalists. Nobody was filming. They were just people in coats holding letters. For a moment, the only sound in the building was a chair leg. "This is a statutory meeting," Piontek said. "It is open to the public. Fenna said from the table. Rule 4. It has been open to the public for 22 years. Who are these people? Some of them are the public. Piontek sat down and opened her case and did what she had done for 22 years, because there was nothing else in the room for her to do. She read the accounts. She read the schedule of distributions. Then she came to the part the deed required to be read out loud, and she read that too because she had read it in an empty hall for 2 decades. And the words had stopped meaning anything a long time before. The following shares remain unclaimed, reasonable inquiry having been made. Share 19. The descendants of Ada Thrippleton, spinster of Gorse Street, untraced. Here, said a man in the 4th row, and stood up. Piontek's eyes came off the page. Wilf Thrippleton was 81 and had his coat over his arm. Wilfred Thrippleton, he said. She was my grandmother's mother. I have lived at 14 Halstow Road since 1964, and I have got a telephone. Please sit down. Read the next one, Fenna said. Piontek looked at the trustee. Gavino Piras had not moved, and did not intend to. Read it, he said. Share 22. The descendants of Joseph Sowerby, ropemaker, untraced. 2 women stood up together near the middle, and one of them put her hand on the other's shoulder to steady her. Share 24. The descendants of Nellie Maddox, aged 16. Untraced. 4 people stood up at the back, and one of them had come from Blackpool. It went on for a very long time. 26 times a woman in a grey coat read out that a family could not be found, and 26 times the family stood up in a hall that had been built with the money paid for their dead. Nobody shouted. Nobody clapped. People simply stood, said a name, and stayed standing until the front third of the room was on its feet, and the plaque on the wall behind the table was the only thing in the building that had not moved. Every one of those searches was made, Piontek said. 4 a year. Correctly. The deed says reasonable enquiry. It does not say successful enquiry. I have complied. Yes, Fenna said. You have. That is what took me 4 times to see. She put one sheet on the table and turned it round. You searched Thrippleton. The register says Thrippleton. You searched Sowerbutt. The register says Sowerby. You have been searching the spellings off that wall. She did not look up at the plaque, and she did not need to. A stonemason copied 41 names out of a newspaper in 1922 and got 4 of them wrong, and you have run every inquiry in 22 years against a mason's mistakes. That is why they are all correctly signed. They were all correctly built to fail. That is a conclusion, not a fact. Then here is a fact. You closed the Thrippleton share in 1987 on a death entry from a registration district that was abolished in 1974. She put the second sheet down. That man died in Rochdale in 1991, and his son registered it. His son is standing behind you. Gavino spoke for the first time, and he spoke slowly, and it went round the city inside a week. You did not fail to find them. You looked for them under a spelling that never belonged to a living person 4 times a year for 22 years, and you were paid a percentage of everything you did not give away. Then Fenna put down the last 2 sheets, and the second motive came up out of the floor. 4 households have been receiving payments since 2002. Maddock of Salford, Kinsley of Bootle. 2 more. Their pedigrees were beautiful and complete, and went back cleanly to a name on the plaque. To the name. On the plaque. Not to any person. You did not invent 4 families, Fenna said. You did better than that. You built them out of the mason's mistakes because a wrong name has no relatives to contradict you. And then you paid them for 22 years. The camera footage came last because by then the room did not need announcing to. Somebody wheeled a monitor in from the committee room and played 4 minutes of a fixed camera over the entrance doors. 2 people going in at 2 o'clock. The same 2 people coming out at 4 minutes past. The minutes on the table said the meeting had lasted 50 minutes and that the public had been heard. Nobody in the hall said anything while it played. When it stopped, the caretaker turned the monitor off at the wall and rolled it back out through the side door, and the wheels were the loudest thing in the building. The commission suspended Elfriede Piontek from the administration of the fund on the following Monday and removed her from it in the autumn. Straker Tracing Services lost the contract and then lost 3 others, because a regulator that has found one thing goes looking for the shape of it elsewhere. The 4 households in Salford and Bootle stopped being paid and were never traced, because there had never been anybody there to trace. Nobody laid a hand on her. Nobody needed to. A clerk called Bootsma, who had kept the fund's paperwork for 22 years and had signed the attendance sheets for every one of those 4-minute meetings, walked out of the side door during the footage and did not come back. He resigned by letter the following Tuesday and moved to another county. He never said one word to anybody about any of it, and nobody ever asked him to, and that was the end of him in the story. Afterwards, in the emptying hall, the commission's officer asked Fenna how she wanted the outcome recorded for the file, given the length of time involved, and offered her the phrase administrative error. Fenna Wiersma had signed her own marriage entry in that room at 5:20 in the afternoon, without her handshaking. No, she said. Put a name to it. The building felt different for a month, and it was not that people were happier. It was that the fund's telephone rang. Fenna came into the long room on a Tuesday with a brown envelope and put it on his desk before he had said anything. That is a dissolution application, she said. It is filled in. It only wants your part. He looked at the envelope, and not at her. March was 4 months ago. March was 4 months ago. And the deed goes to the hearing in October, and you will win it. And when you do, you will not need a wife on a piece of paper. She stayed, standing. There are 26 households about to get 22 years of arrears out of a trust I found the hole in. I sat at that table because I am your wife. Somebody is going to write a letter about that within the year, and they will be right to. So you are leaving to protect the finding. I am leaving so that the finding does not need protecting. Sit down, he said. Please. She sat. There is a post, he said. The commission is going to require an appointed researcher for the fund. Full time. Public published with the authority to reopen any file in it. It is exactly the work you spent 10 years doing, and it needs somebody who has already read every page. No, you have not heard the salary. I do not need to hear the salary. You are handing a job to your wife 4 months after she sat at your table in front of 200 people. I am not doing that to those families, and I am not doing it to myself. Her voice did not rise at all. I have been the cautionary tale for 6 years. I am not going to be the arrangement for the next 20. Then tell me what makes it not an arrangement. She thought about it for a long time, and when she answered, like somebody who had drafted it in her head at 4 in the morning. Take it off you, she said. The post is not yours to give, and it is not yours to end. It sits with the commission. They appoint it, they pay it, they can sack me, and you cannot. Advertise it. If somebody better applies, they get it. And I will hand over my working papers on the first morning. She put her finger on the desk. And it survives you. If you are dead or removed or bankrupt in 4 years, that post is still there, and so are those 26 families. That is the only version I will take. You are asking me to give away control of the only thing my family has that I am proud of. Yes, she said. That is the whole point of it. A thing you can take back is not an apology. It is a subscription. He was quiet for a while. I will sign it this afternoon, he said. You should know that no one has spoken to me like that since my father died. Somebody should have, she said, and picked up the brown envelope and did not put it in the bin and took it upstairs with her. The stonemason worked in the entrance hall of the Institute for 6 days in the spring, and on the Saturday the doors were opened at 11 for 140 people. There was no ceremony to speak of. Nobody made a speech from a lectern. The plaque had come down and gone back up with 4 names cut differently. Underneath it, there was a new panel with 26 household names on it, in the same lettering and the same size. Fenna had insisted on the same size in writing in a letter, with a reference number on it. Wilf Thrippleton stood in front of it for a long time, with his cap in his hand, and did not touch it, and then touched it. "That is it," he said. "That is her spelt right." He told the woman next to him about the day the letter came. Then about the Tuesday after it. A woman had come up his path in her own coat, in no hurry at all, with a folder under her arm. She had sat at his kitchen table for 4 hours. She had asked him what his grandmother's sister was like, before she asked him one thing about money. She never once looked at the clock, he said. You notice that at my age, the fund had a new name too. The family had come off it. Gavino had signed that in October, without discussing it with anybody, and the letterhead now said the Rope Walk Fire Fund and nothing else, and the people who noticed did not mention it, and the people who did not notice were the point. By 12:30, the hall had gone quiet again, and the caterers were stacking chairs at the back, and there were 2 people left in it. Somebody unlocks the east gate at Kelbrook, Fenna said, at 5 in the morning, every Saturday and Sunday. Does he? It used to be locked until 6. You had to walk round the whole building in the dark past the trailer park. She sat down on the edge of the stage. I asked the gateman last week how long it had been unlocked. He said since about the 2nd week of last September, and he said nobody had ever told him why, and he had stopped asking after the 1st month because nobody would answer him. That sounds like a health and safety improvement. It sounds like something somebody did in my 2nd week, she said, and never once mentioned in a year, and I have been walking through it 200 times without knowing. He looked at the stacked chairs for a moment. The dissolution application is still in the drawer upstairs, he said. It has been in the drawer for 8 months. I have never asked you about it, because I promised you an honest answer to anything you asked, and I did not want to find out what I would say. Ask me now. Stay married to me, he said. Not for a deed. There is no deed left. I am asking for myself, which is a thing I have not done in 19 years, and I would like it very much if you would. Fenna did not answer him. She got off the stage, walked the length of the hall to the little desk by the doors where the Institute took its bookings, picked up the telephone, and dialed the number that was printed on the wall in front of her. Hello, it is the hall I want. Yes, the 14th, from 4 o'clock. She listened. Piras. No, the whole hall. There will be a lot of us. She put the phone down and turned round. Who is coming, he said. Everybody I found. She came back up the hall between the stacked chairs and stopped in front of him, and he put his hand out, palm up the way a man does when he is asking rather than offering. She put hers in it. Neither of them hurried, and neither of them said anything else, and the caterers went on, stacking chairs at the back of a room that had once been the worst place she had ever stood. That hall had been built out of an apology nobody ever paid, and for 100 years it held weddings above 41 names spelt wrong by a man in a hurry. It took a woman nobody in her own trade would serve to stand at the front of it and read the register properly, not because the room was ever given to her, because she was the only person in it who knew what a name is for. On the 14th, the doors stood open at 4, and there was food for 200 and this time it was eaten.